All right, ready to dive deep today. We're tackling Scientology.
Ooh, diving right in.
You sent over some really interesting snippets from L Ron Hubbard himself. Scientology, the fundamentals of thought. And gotta say, it's a bit of a mind bender.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we're not here to tell you what to believe. Just explore the ideas.
Right, right.
You've had some time to peek at this material. First impressions, what jumped out at you?
You know, what I find really striking is how Hubbard positions Scientology.
Well,
Not as a religion, but as a science.
interesting.
He directly challenges what he calls Wundtian psychology.
And for those of us who,
For those unfamiliar, that's Wilhelm Wundt, considered the father of experimental psychology.
gotcha.
Hubbard saw it as a limited view of what humans are capable of.
It's like he's saying, we've been looking at the mind all wrong this whole time.
Absolutely.
He's all about this untapped potential, right?
Absolutely. And this leads him to this intriguing concept, the cycle of action. Now, we usually think of things in terms of create, survive, destroy.
Yeah.
Pretty standard, yeah.
That makes sense.
Hubbard says that's just the surface. He dives deeper, suggesting it's all creation, a constant cycle. Creation to survive, counter-creation as destruction. Even choosing not to create is part of it.
Okay, I need an example, because that's a pretty wild way to reframe how we see the world.
Think of it like this. Imagine you're dealing with procrastination.
Ugh, the worst.
Most of us try to fight it head on, right?
You got to power through.
But Hubbard might say, instead of focusing on not procrastinating, tap back into that initial desire, the goal you wanted to achieve. By recreating that strong intention, the procrastination naturally fades away. It's not about willing things out of existence, but consciously willing what we do want into reality.
So it's not just positive thinking, but almost like positive doing. That's
Yeah.
a pretty big shift in perspective.
And this connects directly to another key idea, the 3 conditions of existence. Hubbard argues that it's not just about existing, but how we exist. He outlines these conditions as be, do, have.
Okay, break that down. Why is being first on the list?
Because Hubbard believed that true being is the foundation. It precedes doing, taking actions, making things happen, and possessing things, achieving goals.
Right.
And he links this to the idea of valences, essentially, the masks or roles we take on in life.
I think we can all relate to that. Ever catch yourself acting just like your mom or dad, even when you're trying not to?
Exactly. Hubbard argues that we often get stuck in these valences, especially those adopted from our parents. He gives the example of a child who feels unseen by their mothers, so they start mimicking the father's mannerisms to get that same attention.
So it's almost like we're trying on these identities, these ways of being, to figure out what gets us what we crave, even if it's not authentic to us.
Precisely. And Hubbard believed that this can lead to a lot of unhappiness, a sense of being unfulfilled because we're not truly being ourselves.
So how do we break free from these limiting valences? Is it even possible?
Hubbard believed it was, and this is where his concept of auditing comes into play. He saw it as a way to help people peel back those layers, to confront those adopted identities, and reclaim their true selves.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've got this idea of being as the foundation, but then Hubbard takes it even further with the 8 dynamics, right?
Yeah.
He's not just talking about our individual psychology anymore. It's like he's mapping out the entire scope of existence itself.
Absolutely. These dynamics represent the urges that drive us,
Okay.
from the most basic level of self to the vastness of infinity.
Wow.
You've got the self, sex and family, groups, mankind, the animal kingdom, the physical universe, the spiritual, and finally, infinity or the supreme being.
Out of those 8, which one do you think people tend to misunderstand the most? Or maybe even neglect?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's hard to choose just one. But I think a lot of people get tripped up by the dynamic of groups.
Oh,
We're naturally drawn to belonging, to being part of something larger than ourselves.
Right, makes sense.
But Hubbard argued that blindly following a group without considering its true purpose or its impact on your own individual growth
Yeah.
can be detrimental.
It's like that saying, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yes.
And that goes for groups too, right? If a group isn't evolving, supporting its members' individual journeys, it can become stagnant, even harmful.
Exactly. And this is where Hubbard's emphasis on communication, particularly as part of his ARC triangle, becomes so crucial. He believed that true connection, whether with an individual or a group, relies on more than just shared interests. or good vibes.
So it's not enough to just have affinity, that feeling of liking someone or something, or even reality, agreeing on what's real or important.
Right.
You need all three.
You need communication to solidify those connections.
Okay.
And he's not just talking about surface-level chit-chat. He saw communication as the active exchange of understanding, the bridge between our inner worlds and the world around us.
And without that bridge, things can fall apart pretty quickly. Misunderstandings lead to conflict, which can escalate. You know, it's interesting how he connects this breakdown in communication to the lower levels of his tone scale.
Absolutely. But even when communication is flowing, we're still constantly navigating this complex game of life, as Hubbard puts it. And that brings us to another one of his intriguing and perhaps controversial ideas.
Right, this whole concept of life as a game,
Yes.
I have to admit, it throws me off a little.
Really?
Why frame it that way? It almost seems a bit cynical. What are your thoughts on that?
I can see why you might get that impression.
Yeah.
But I think Hubbard's perspective on this is a bit more nuanced. Remember,
Yeah.
he's all about personal agency,
Right.
about recognizing our own power to shape our reality.
Okay.
And in a way, framing life as a game emphasizes that agency.
Okay.
Games have rules, sure.
Right.
But within those rules, there's freedom to strategize. Yeah.
To make choices,
Uh-huh.
to win or lose based on those choices.
Okay, I think I can get behind that.
Exactly.
So it's less about being cynical
Yeah.
and more about acknowledging the structure,
Yes.
the boundaries
Exactly.
that actually allow us to exercise our freedom.
And this is where his concept of pan-determinism comes into play.
Okay.
It's about being able to see both sides of a situation,
Okay.
to understand the forces at play,
Uh-huh.
and to act from a place of knowledge,
Yeah.
rather than just reacting blindly.
So instead of feeling like we're at the mercy of circumstance,
Yeah.
it's about recognizing that we can influence those circumstances,
Okay, exactly.
even work with them to create a more desirable outcome.
You got it.
It's about stepping out of that limited, self-determined perspective and recognizing our potential to be pan-determined,
Yes.
to influence the whole game, not just our little corner of it.
Exactly.
You know, it makes me think of that old saying, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails.
Is that kind of what Hubbard's getting at?
I think that's a great analogy.
Okay, good.
And it leads us to another key concept in Scientology,
Okay.
the three parts of man: the thetan, the mind, and the body.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting.
Yes.
Even a little mystical, right?
Sure.
How does this fit into everything we've discussed so far?
Remember how Hubbard emphasizes personal agency?
Right,
The idea that we're not just passive bystanders in our own lives?
right.
Well, the concept of the thetan takes that agency to the next level.
Okay,
He describes it as the true you,
okay.
the spirit, the consciousness that exists independently of the physical universe.
So not the mind or the body, but
That's
something.
More. Exactly.
Okay.
And according to Scientology, the thetan is inherently powerful,
Okay.
capable of incredible things.
Huh.
But through its interactions with the physical universe,
Uh-huh.
with matter, energy, space, and time,
Right.
it can become entangled, weighed down,
Interesting.
and lose sight of its true nature.
So it's like this brilliant, radiant being
Yes.
getting bogged down by the density of the material world.
That's a great way to put it.
Wow.
And this is where auditing comes in.
Again.
Hubbard saw it as a way to help the thetan break free from those entanglements,
Okay.
to reclaim its innate abilities and awareness.
We touched on auditing earlier.
Yes.
But let's dive a bit deeper.
Yeah.
What does that process actually look like?
It involves a trained auditor
Okay.
guiding a pre-clear that's the person being audited through a series of structured questions and exercises.
Okay.
The goal is to help the pre-clear examine their own experiences,
Uh-huh.
confront limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
and ultimately achieve a greater understanding of themselves as a spiritual being.
So it's about peeling back those layers like we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Those valences and patterns we've adopted
Exactly.
to reveal the true self that lies beneath.
Precisely.
And this ties back into the emphasis on knowledge and responsibility
Yes.
that we discussed earlier, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the difference between reading a book about building a house
Okay.
and actually picking up the hammer and nails and building it yourself.
Exactly.
And just like building a house, shaping our reality requires effort,
Yes.
skill,
Yeah,
and a
yeah.
willingness to take responsibility for the outcome.
It does.
But that can feel daunting, can it?
it can.
Taking responsibility for our own thoughts, our own emotions,
Yeah.
even the circumstances we find ourselves in.
It can be challenging, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's where the empowering aspect of Scientology comes in.
Okay.
Hubbard believed that while we might be influenced by past experiences,
Right.
by the games we've played,
Yeah.
we always have the power to choose our response in the present moment.
So it's about recognizing that we're not just products of our past,
Right.
but active creators of our future.
Exactly.
And that's where auditing can be so transformative.
It can be.
By helping us confront those past experiences, those limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
it frees us to make more conscious choices in the present, to become more deliberate creators of our own reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's like Hubbard is saying,
Yeah.
you have more power than you realize,
Yes.
and here are the tools to help you access it.
Yes.
But I imagine that kind of power comes with a certain level of responsibility too.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
Hubbard recognized that with great power comes great responsibility.
Of course. Yeah.
He emphasized the importance of ethics,
Okay.
particularly within the context of Scientology's practices.
So it's not just about personal gain,
No.
but about using these tools for the betterment of oneself and others.
Precisely.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
if we really do have that much influence over our reality,
Yeah.
what are we collectively creating with our thoughts, our beliefs?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And it's something Hubbard grappled with throughout his writings.
Okay.
He saw Scientology as not just a path to personal liberation,
Right.
but as a potential solution to the world's problems. He believed that if enough individuals could achieve a higher level of awareness,
Okay.
a greater sense of responsibility for their own thoughts and actions,
Okay.
it could create a ripple effect, leading to a more just and compassionate world.
So it's not just about escaping the game, but about changing the rules of the game itself,
Exactly.
elevating the way we all play.
And for Hubbard, that meant tackling things like conflict, prejudice, destruction at their root.
At the level of thought.
Yes. He believed that by addressing those harmful thoughts, beliefs within ourselves, we could create a more harmonious world around us.
A powerful vision, that's for sure, whether you agree with all of his ideas or not.
Right.
There's no denying that Hubbard was a visionary thinker.
Definitely.
He tackled some big questions about human nature, consciousness, the very fabric of reality.
We certainly did.
And he offered up some equally big answers.
Yeah.
Even if those answers sometimes challenge our conventional ways of thinking, they definitely challenge our thinking. This whole deep dive has been quite the journey, from the nature of consciousness to the power of belief and everything in between. So much to unpack and ponder. Is there one thing that really stands out to you from all of this? One key takeaway that you hope our listener will carry with them?
That's a tough one. But if I had to choose, I think it'd be the emphasis on personal responsibility.
Okay.
Hubbard might have framed it in unconventional ways,
Right.
with his talk of thetans and operating level.
Right.
But at its core, Scientology is about recognizing our own agency and shaping our experiences.
Okay.
We're not just victims of circumstance. We have the power to choose, to create, to change.
That's a powerful reminder,
Yeah.
and one that I think we can all benefit from, regardless of our beliefs.
Absolutely.
It's easy to feel powerless in the face of life's challenges.
Yeah.
But Hubbard reminds us that we are not just along for the ride.
We're not.
We're holding the steering wheel.
Exactly. And how we choose to steer is ultimately up to us.
So to our listener out there, we encourage you, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep choosing the reality you want to create. A huge thanks to you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Scientology. It's been fascinating. And to our listeners, keep those questions coming. We'll see you on the next deep dive.